Wanted to do my teaching videos, upload them. We'll talk a little bit about, you know, one of the historic things people were waiting for this last year was I remember when I had to do a final in high school. Finally, I had to write a paper. I remember this. And we had to pick what subject we wanted to write on. And my sister, who has sadly passed away, but she was a year or two ahead of me in high school. And she wrote a paper on John F. Kennedy and the assassination of Kennedy. And back in those days, you wrote it by hand. So I used hers. Now, I don't remember if I rewrote it, but I used hers and whatever it was. Now today, people do all that stuff online and everything. But the big thing that historians, many liberals, were waiting for was the release of the JFK files. Now, if you did a poll, I believe more than half of the American population, at least half, believe that in the JFK assassination and the Lee Harvey Oswald, and even how he made statements like, look, I'm being set up. And then, of course, he was shot by Jack Ruby and all that. And Oliver Stone did that very long movie on it. But most liberals, most people that consider themselves liberals, would believe that either through the CIA and the FBI, that there was involvement in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And many have held that view honestly because there's enough to hold that view. And I just find it amazing. I've heard liberal pundits, news people who hold that view say it is impossible for the FBI and the CIA and these groups. It's impossible. I heard a classic liberal on PBS, I forget his name now. He's countering the so-called conservative David Brooks, who's not really, I forget his name, but I remember how months back when Trump tweeted like about the FBI and stuff, he said these men have given their lives for this country. And if anybody would ever believe, this is a narrative I heard, if anybody would ever believe that it's possible that like FBI or CIA or anybody in government, that it would be the destruction of the foundations of the country. I've heard this so many times. And so there are people today who hold the view that the FBI and the CIA were involved in one of the greatest sins committed, meaning the taking out of an American president. I know some do not believe there was any conspiracy, but a lot do. But then they would also look at anything that's come out with the whole FBI and the whole thing. What we would ask, if we had a voice as Americans, was not only do we want the texts of Mr. Comey, we would like to know any communication he had with Robert Mueller. Because him and Mueller and Comey were good friends. And Comey pretty much admitted to a crime before Congress already, or in public about the leaking of things. We would also want to know if people who had power talked among themselves, and if Comey had any texts to Mueller that said, I'm going to get this passed over to you, to a special counsel, and hopefully we're going to be able, because all of that, to me, Fishgate, all of that is real fishy to me. But just, and why did I share that thing about the JFK? There are many liberals who will say strongly that the FBI, the CIA, were involved in the assassination of an American president. And some of those same liberals today hold the view that it would be outrageous to even believe that in the dealings of the FBI and Strokes and Carter Page and all these things, there's enough that's come out that you could see that they're also covering up things. You know, if you're texting people and talking about secret societies and all, that's enough. But you're not going to see that in the mainstream press. You see, you're not going to see that in the mainstream press. And even if you could convince a person that, wait a minute, you do believe that there is such a thing as corruption within these societies in our country? Oh, yes, I believe strongly. Do you believe it's possible that in this case with Mr. Trump? No. Now, if you put them on the spot, they don't realize their hypocrisy. They don't realize it. Many of them don't realize that they actually couldn't care less about the Juanita Broaddrick thing. Many of them don't realize if you showed a body of a baby and then one dismembered, that it's the same thing. They would be outraged. So it's not really a matter of, are you looking for truth in whatever it is you're dealing with? It's a matter of, you are political. You say, John, you're political. Look, right out here, I prayed for President Obama for 8 years. And my intercession time for presidents and leaders and those in authority, that is a Monday and a Friday prayer time by name, not just those leaders. So for 8 years, I did pray for that man. And I wonder how many liberal people even once prayed for him. Well, what are you saying, Jim? I'm saying you have to, if you're going to seek to engage in the debate, whatever debate you're engaging in, become educated. Become educated. You wouldn't be mad if you realized there were sincere Democratic people working for the FBI and CIA who kind of bought into the thing, we have to do something, just in case this man gets elected. That's what they were discussing in their text messages. We might have to put Andy's plan in place, just in case Trump gets elected. It's like an insurance policy. This is the conversation. You don't expect someone to die when they're 40, but if they do, you have to have a backup plan. Now you have people behind the scenes talking that way about Trump before they got onto these investigations, saying we must, do our patriotic duty, and if it meant whatever they had to do. I'm not a big defender of the man. It's what I'm seeing. Nations rise up against nations because they feel like they've been oppressed as a people. And in the more violent ways, they rise up and they do armed battle, basically. They fight. They say to a certain point, we get to that point. But in this country, the way we do it is through politics. The way we do it is through having a general disgraced because he lied. And somehow in this country, lying to that bureau, FBI, is considered a very high crime. Like there's a standard that these people are just, I don't know how many employees there are, 30-something thousand in the FBI. They're no different than if you got hired at a fire department, a police department. People, somehow these people are above doing all these collusions and all these things. So many of my liberal friends will be outraged about believing that there was FBI and CIA involvement in the assassination of the U.S. president, believing strongly in that. And at the same time will hold the view, and I've heard this on news media. What's his name? I've heard it. He said, if you ever questioned, like the FBI or the CIA, this was about 6 months ago, he said, don't you understand that these people, some of them have died for this country? Of course. And so he's a pundit. He's supposed to be an educated man. Mark, what is it? He said, therefore, if you ever question them, if you ever said, wait a minute, he said, in so doing, you're ripping at the fabric of democracy and freedom, but you do it yourself. It's not so much that the fake news is fake, which we all know they are, but it's that they don't even see what they do. Number two.